Well, welcome to Nature Calls, everybody. It is so good to see everyone. I recognize several familiar faces, of course, and names on the call today. But for those of you who don't know me, I am Allison Baines, and I'm an Associate Director of Philanthropy with the Nature Conservancy in Alabama. As we prepare to begin our presentation, I want to first let you know that we are recording this Zoom meeting. Second, we will be muting your microphone and ask that you please submit your comments and questions by typing them into the chat feature you see at the bottom of your screen. This will make it easier for our presenter to manage the questions and answers at the end of the presentation. We've received some great comments so far about this program that we are calling Nature Calls. It's our attempt to get you out of the house virtually and into our conservation work taking place around the state. Today's presentation will be approximately 15 minutes long, followed by an additional 15 minutes for questions and answers. We will feature a new conservation program every week on Thursdays at 3 p.m. And now I am very pleased to introduce today's presenter, our newly named State Director, Mitch Reid, who will take this time to introduce himself, tell you a little bit about his background, and discuss his vision for the future of conservation in Alabama. Take it away, Mitch.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for letting me have this conversation with everyone. I've been able to sit in on a couple of the calls so far, and I'm so impressed with not only my team, who are just fantastic, but all the engagement that we've seen from everybody from around the state and from outside of the state. So give me 1 second to figure out how to share my screen here. It's very important that I get the right one pulled up. And there we go. There we are. Can everyone see this? It should be me and a bunch of hoodlums in a boat. All right, good. So my name's Mitch Reid. I'm the state director now. I was formerly our director of external affairs, and just absolutely thrilled to be part of this team at this point. Even though it's a challenging time, it's a wonderful time to be doing this work. And I really want to say thank you to everybody on this call for all of your help. These are my two boys. The one in the foreground here looking at the camera, who's looking at his mom, is Emory George. He's 6. And Walden, who is in this picture, just learning to help me paddle, is 8 now. Interestingly, this occurred on the Paint Rock River a couple of years ago, and it must have worked because we did the Cahaba River from the Living River, the Shelby County Park around Living River down to the National Refuge in Bibb County. And Emory George and I actually fell out of our boat going over one of the shoals. And Walden, there in the middle, was responsible for paddling through the shoals by himself. And he kept our canoe upright, made it through, and we didn't lose anything except for my pride. And so that was fun. My journey to this place, I started at the end. I'll start at the beginning. I'm from the Wiregrass. Grew up in a little town called Bellwood, Alabama. If you look at the map in the background here, there's just above the V in Geneva, there's a little BLL starting the word Bellwood. Most people in Bellwood don't know they're in Bellwood. They actually think they're in Dale County because that's where the zip code is. I grew up on the banks of the Choctawhatchee River. My parents were both public school educators, and I guess I grew up with a sense of the place that I'm from, this place, this Alabama. I'm rooted in Alabama. From there, I went to the United States Military Academy in West Point in New York, a completely different scenario. things I'd never seen before, like snow, and people that ate hoagies from Long Island. They run that thing all together instead of Long Island. That's Long Island. My first roommate was from New York, and I learned an awful lot there. But I think what I learned most was the commitment that it takes to get something done, and really a passion for being true to your ideals. And I've taken that with me. From there, for some reason, I decided to go to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and jump out of perfectly good airplanes, to the complete confusion of everybody in the Air Force that was flying them. That is not a picture of me, but that's a typical Thursday afternoon at Fort Bragg. I learned a lot about longleaf pine trees, because that's one of the places that they are very well protected because of the federal government. And I also learned about getting through adversity and what it meant to be a leader. When you jump out of a plane with just your team and you land and you have to somehow get home, you learn a lot about what it takes to move people and to motivate people, and what your people can teach to you. I think that was probably the most important lesson. And then from there, I decided to come home. I went to the University of Alabama School of Law. I think that what that provided for me is a respect for the rule set that we live under, the laws and how they came about, and what it means to really put in place long-term protection for the world we live in. After that, there's a little picture down here of a bunch of boats. I was the program director for a statewide organization called the Alabama Rivers Alliance. That organization was dedicated. My job was really to develop a water plan for the state that would protect the flow of water in our rivers. And I learned how hard it is to do that kind of work. But what I also learned is that this state is full of passionate people who love the outdoors, and it doesn't matter what their background or their political affiliations are. We get wrapped up in that a lot. But that picture that you see there is full of people from all over this state that are coming together to raise their voice at that time for the rivers. And I think that that's something that we can tap into and leverage today. From there, I joined the Conservancy in just the dream of a transition. I was able to do government relations and external affairs for the Nature Conservancy. That was a peek behind the curtain. Elizabeth Downey helped me on a couple of trips down to Bayou La Battery, and we got to take Congressman Byrne out on a boat and tell him about the things that are going on there. And you know what I take from that time is a real sense that everybody wants to do the right thing. They may not always do the right thing, and there's a whole lot of different things that drive people in different directions. But at the end of the day, nature's popular. Nature is a good story that anybody can tell. And I'd never met a single person that in the whole time that I was doing policy work and government relations that didn't say they didn't love nature. There was a lot of confusion about which were the good snakes, but nobody thought it was a bad idea to protect the world we live in. And then now I've been on the job for 2 weeks, and I always knew it, but I have never quite been so impressed with how much the supporters of this organization and the work that we do matter. I came in naively several years ago thinking that nature would pay for itself. It doesn't. It takes the people like you on this call and everybody else who gets behind us to really make this work. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do in the Conservancy, but that's my fundamental takeaway after 2 weeks, is that if we didn't have you guys, then we would have had to wrap this thing up a long time ago. So I want to start with an appreciation and a thank you. I will say that as I look for the future, I have to be cognizant of the legacy that we have in the past, our conservation legacy. This is the wall at the end of the walls of Jericho. It's been named one of the most popular hikes in all of the continental United States. And there's a lesson in the walls of Jericho. And it's the lesson of Steve Northcutt, who is our protection specialist. And it's really hard to get to the end of a project, but it is so worth the time and patience to get there. Steve Northcutt is responsible for us in our protection of the walls of Jericho. He's responsible for the protection that we've done down in Grand Bay and so many other places. And this team of conservationists from top of the state down to the bay is just world class, and they have so many successes to put towards our name. Just to name a few, we've got the national wildlife refuges that we love. So think of Bon Secure down in the bay, the Cahaba National Wildlife Refuge. Now we have a mountain longleaf wildlife refuge. Ironically, on Fort McClellan, where I did my military police training out of West Point, it is now our newest national wildlife refuge in the state. Our national forest, we've been systematically filling in the gaps in our forest so that public land is available for the people of Alabama. We've got Little River Canyon, which I spent last weekend with my family. I call it the best swimming hole in Alabama because you got to dive down to get into it, and you got to want to get back out. Grand Bay was the first thing I was able to participate on when I came to the Conservancy, and I didn't realize at the time that was a result of 20 years of effort to protect a contiguous piece of coastline from Bayou Battery all the way over into Mississippi. I just came in on the tail end of it and got to tell the governor what a great thing it was without understanding how much time and effort had gone into it. The Forever Wild programs that so many of you guys are familiar with, but also the creation and preservation of the program itself, which protects land for the people of Alabama. And then most recently, the Red Hills, which has leveraged almost $20 million of federal money to offset the cost of the state at a 3-to-1 match. For the people of Monroe County, and it's probably going to keep our state salamander, the Red Hills salamander, from being listed as an endangered species. So that's our legacy, and that's those are the shoulders that we stand on today. It's not just about protecting the places, it's about understanding their story and inspiring people to come to us and to work with us on this work. This obviously is the Cahaba lily down at the Cahaba River National Wildlife Refuge. It's not just a pretty flower. It's sitting in one of the most biodiverse places in all the world. And by protecting this place and understanding that flower and to bring people to that place, we have been able to inspire people to protect so many miles of the Cahaba River. If we move north into the Paint Rock, another one of the most biodiverse and important rivers in all of the state, we are now understanding how that place is going to be critical for moving species up and north and protecting an entire suite of species as we face a changing climate. We've been working throughout the state to inspire people to protect the longleaf pine, to restore and protect the longleaf pine ecosystems. Keith talked a little bit about that last week, about how much we've been able to leverage a fire program to the benefit of our iconic tree species. And then we have people right now sitting up on Sharp Bingham Mountain in North Alabama, which may be one of the most biodiverse mountain hardwood ecosystems that we have left in Alabama. They're finding new species as we speak, because we're working with partners up there to do tree surveys and plant surveys at a scale that have really never been done in Alabama, and really have only been done in 4 or 5 places in all the world. And the information and science that's coming out of that is so impressive. And then by doing all of this work, the point is not to do the science. The point is to do the science. And what the Conservancy does so well is we do the science and then we tell the story. And we inspire people to come to these places and enjoy these places and understand what they mean, so that we can protect the places that protect them. And it's just a joy to see sort of those eyes open when they get it. And then, you know, we can't just protect a place. We have to actively work. This is a pitcher plant bog. And you can tell, if you look back onto the trees back in the back, you can see the fire scars. So the reason that this pitcher plant is doing so well in this management of our lands, it's, you know, it's not just enough to have a place. We have to also make sure that the functions of that place are there. So the fire program obviously is what you see here. Think of our coastal program, where we are leveraging the oil spill money to rebuild marshlands outside of Biobattery at Lightning Point. And that is not only going to make that land more resilient, but it is going to protect the people and the industry of the town of Biobattery. And that project, frankly, has been touted as the example project in the Gulf Coast of how to take oil spill restoration dollars and put that to use for the people of the Gulf of Mexico. At the same time, we've got our river restoration programs in full swing, where we are not only fixing small individual projects, but we're doing science on an entire river system, so that we understand where we can put the right money to do the most amount of good for a river system. We're doing it in the Paint Rock. We're doing it on the Locust Fork River to protect not only the drinking water supply of Birmingham, but also, man, the best whitewater rafting and kayaking in probably the entire state. And we're able to do that because we can take the capabilities of the Conservancy and we can catalyze the partnerships that allow us to do the big scale geographic projects that you see. An example there is we were just awarded a grant through the Department of Agriculture to do river restoration. That's $1 million, but that's $1 million that then have to be leveraged from our partners and our supporters to make that possible. It is because of our partners that we were able to say that we can use that money, and we're going to do real work for the people of North Alabama because of that. So a vision of Alabama, and what's my vision? It's really to maintain what we're doing and just and keep it going. This is from if you haven't seen our year in review, this map is the centerfold of that. I encourage anyone who doesn't have a copy of this to get a copy. We can get it to you, because it really lays out what this vision is. And I won't read all of this to you, but you can see how we are working across the state, from projects in the Gulf up through the mountains and rivers of Alabama, all the way up into North Alabama. There's science behind it, and there's a commitment to real conservation. There's two things that I sort of look at when I talk about what my vision is. And one is to protect this heritage for the people and nature. But for the people of Alabama, this is the heritage that I want to give to my kids, a place that's worth being from. And the other is that we're going to take on the challenges of our time. You know, there was a statement that was made by our Director of Conservation, David Brooks, that just when we faced these existential problems, we have an organization capable of taking on those challenges. And that inspires me for the work that we're going to do in Alabama. From a changing climate to balancing the impacts of people and nature on our sensitive waterways in our urban areas, restoring our fire onto landscapes so that our native longleaf and wiregrass systems can come back. Those are the type of projects that the Nature Conservancy can do, but we can't do it alone. We have to have the partnerships that are going to make this work. Partnership is everything to what we do. There's no way that a team of 20 to 30 people, of no matter how dedicated we were, would be able to do all the work that we're trying to do. And so those partnerships, from building the partnerships with our agencies like the Forestry Commission on a prescribed burn like you see here, or building the partnership with groups from around the states, not only the local advocates, but also the local land trusts, the community foundations, the businesses that are committed to being good stewards and good corporate citizens. That allows us to do this kind of work and to take this action, to take the necessary action at the level and the scale that we want to. And then finally, I would say that it's about tangible results. And it's not just our legacy as a group of staff members, but it is the legacy of you and of our supporters, that when you join us on this journey, on this, to realize this mission, you're part of the success story. You have influence in the vision, and you get to see sort of the work done, so that when at the end of the day, someone says, I supported the Nature Conservancy, or I was part of that team, or I showed up for a work day, it means something. I say that and it sounds trite, but it means something. And it means something for the kids down the hall who are trying to work through homeschool right now. So what does it mean to do all of this at a time of COVID? So what is conservation in a time of COVID? Well, some of it's the same and some of it's sort of different. Jason has a great job. He gets to go out in a canoe by himself. There's nobody more socially distanced than Jason, unless he's got somebody in the front of that canoe. Our fire crew is out continuing the work. We've actually been able to get more of our land burned this year than we have been able to do in many recent years, despite the virus. What you see up there is one of the rare occasions where we were able to pull off a burn at night. This was at Otaga WMA, and it was the first time that we were able to put together a fire that both burned the wildlife management area of the state and the Boy Scout reservation that connects to it in a joint burn, so that we didn't have to go through and cut down fire lines between the two properties. And that's the connection that the Conservancy brought to that project. Down in the bottom right corner, you see the almost complete Lightning Point project. We're looking at trying to plant now. What we wanted to do is bring people out and let you get the experience of planting the plants, but we can't do that because of the virus. So we're going to document the planting and report that back to you, so that you know what we did and how it turns out, so that when down the road, when you see this newly reconstructed marsh and reconnected streams, and you see those plants out there, you know how that came about. And we're going to tell that story. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't call out my friends. I'm sorry, Elizabeth, that got put right over you, but this is actually our trustees reaching out to Senator Shelby's office a couple of weeks ago to make the case for conservation, even during COVID. We couldn't fly up to DC, so we set up a Zoom call and worked through the priorities for Alabama. I couldn't be more proud of this team of board members who got on the horn and took time out of their day for 2 separate days to talk to Senator Jones' staff and Senator Shelby's staff and make the case that what they're doing up in Washington matters even now for what we're doing down here. So I'll leave it with this. It's just thank you. It's thank you for the team that I'm with. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's something that I'm passionate about. I'm probably running out of time because it's past time. But I'll also thank you for everyone on here who has joined us in this journey and supported us. It's making a difference, and I really appreciate it. With that, I'm going to stop the share, see how much trouble I'm in the chat. And how do you want me to do this, Allison? Do you want me to go through it, or do you want to read them off to me?
I can help if you'd like. Let's see here. Let's start with, what is the greatest conservation challenge in Alabama? And how does conservation change given COVID-19? You probably already addressed a little bit, but
Yeah. I'll tell you, there's 2 things. The greatest conservation challenge it's twofold. One is that we have to tell the story of the work we're doing so that people can engage with us. I'm very proud of the work that we have done over the last several decades at the Conservancy. That work is because of the supporters that have come to us and been with us. And if we don't tell that story and keep the next generation of conservationists coming up, it's going to be hard to maintain that. And that there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now, and making sure that people understand that they can make a difference here and support the work that matters to everybody. I think that's the challenge. The hard question is, how do you deal with a problem like climate change? That's a hard problem. That's a wicked problem. That's a problem that we can solve, but we have to solve it together. The challenge is bringing that message through all of the noise and making it bringing the people together to make it work. How does conservation change in COVID? We've talked a little bit about it, but really the challenge is if we're trying to tell a story and I can't take you out and show you the pitcher plants or the Cahaba, I've got to somehow bring that story to you. This is a great way of doing it. We're leveraging technology like Zoom and YouTube and Facebook. We now have a Twitter account so that we can engage with politicians more readily. But we're really having to sort of flex different muscles in order to bring that story out. It's also hard to bring partners together in a way that is safe for everybody. And we're committed to making sure that when we do something at the Conservancy, nobody's going to come away from that feeling like they were put in danger or exposed unnecessarily. But in order to do that, we've got to plant plants from 6 feet apart. And we really like to be together with each other. And I think that's one of the challenges, is just maintaining that sense of our family while we're separated. The last part of that, I didn't mean to skip over, but what we do here has tangible results both in the region and worldwide. Very quickly, what we do on rivers, the rivers don't start and stop here. So they flow out of Georgia, flow out of Mississippi. We borrow the water for a little bit and send it down to the Gulf of Mexico. And so what we do here is connected to the entire system. And we work really closely with other parts of the Conservancy on accomplishing the mission. And then we also take our work worldwide. So the work we're doing on fire here translates into going into Africa and teaching fire management, different ecosystem, but the techniques are really the same. And we've been able to bring people from Africa and from South America up to the US and do on the ground fire training so they can take that knowledge back home. And then also we take the knowledge that our team of scientists worldwide is doing and put that into play here on the ground. so Allison, I'm going to jump to the one I see just below, which is how do we envision TNC's role in the next generation? I think we have to be smart with how we tell the story. We have to reach out to those generations where they are. Some of that is frankly looking at the technology that's in use today versus the techniques that were used in the past. I think that I've got a pretty good sounding board down here for the very, very young generation with my two boys. But I do think it is important for us to be intentional and strategic in how we're going to engage with the up and coming philanthropist and the up and coming conservationist, because ultimately they're going to carry our legacy forward. And we're in the long game. When we protect a piece of land, we're protecting it forever, especially if we take it on as one of our easements of one of our preserves. And so building that passion and that love in my generation, the generation that is coming through college now, and then the generation that's growing up right now and learning about the world we live in, it has to be an intentional and strategic and a long-term game. And I think we've got a good plan for how we're going to do that. What else do we have?
Can we skip ahead to one of the last questions submitted? Did we have any role in the Florida fire? How did it go wrong?
So Becky, that is a fantastic question. And I will, I'll tell you that you open up, we could do an entire Nature Calls on that question. No, we did not have a role in it. But Keith Tassin was actually working remotely from our rainwater preserve and went down to check on the fire to make sure that it wasn't going to come up and encroach on our preserve. It didn't, and one of the reasons it didn't is and that we haven't had that problem necessarily, knock on wood, is we engage in a really good fire program that brings that natural fire rotation back into our pine ecosystems. And what that does is it reduces the pressure on those systems, it reduces the fuel, and it makes those wildfires much less likely. But let me tell you, yesterday was a really bad day for the panhandle of Florida. It is tinder dry. While we've been getting all this rain up here and the rivers are flooding and you can barely get down the Cahaba, the Gulf Coast and the panhandle are in drought. And when you have pine ecosystems in drought conditions, they're ready to go up. We've just got to be very, very vigilant. What we can do is make sure that the fires that we set are done responsibly, and it reduces the fuel load to avoid those natural wildfire conditions. So we didn't have a but we certainly have lessons that can be learned from that. And Elizabeth, I see the Shell oil refinery. It's funny because that happened in the same place as a fire that we were involved in many, many years ago. That example, Elizabeth, of our involvement many, many years ago is why we restructured our fire program and why we now train our fire program to the national wildfire standards, so that we're able to respond in the case of a big fire like that. All right, so I know my time is up. This has been a pleasure. Thank you guys for letting me jaw jack on all the things that I find fun and interesting in the state. Jeff has my information. You guys can reach out and contact me. I'd be happy to talk to you about any of this or anything else that you'd like to talk about with the Conservancy. But with that, I got to turn it back over to Allison.
Sorry, I have a cat who is wanting to talk and be heard on our Zoom call right now. Thank you so much, Mitch. That was a really great overview of where we've been and where we're going with conservation in our state. Nature Calls will feature a new area of TNC Alabama conservation each week on Thursday at 3 p.m. Next week, our Marine Programs intern, Cassie Eldridge, will take us on a tour of our work at Rabbit Island. Everyone on today's Zoom call will receive an invitation to next week's program. Feel free to share the invitation by forwarding the email you receive or send us the name and email address of someone you'd like to invite. As you can see from today's presentation, conservation never stops. For the Nature Conservancy, the work goes on, even during a pandemic when the rest of us are hunkering down at home. It is a critical time for the future of our organization, and we need your financial support now more than ever. And if you have a donor advised fund in place, there's no better time to make a meaningful gift to help keep our work going. So if you can, please make a gift today at support.nature.org/Alabama. And thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon, and I hope to see you all again next week.
Thank you.